Feeding your fish properly is absolutely essential if you want to keep good looking, healthy fish. But get it wrong, and you could end up with diseased or sickly fish, an unbalanced tank, or even worse, complete collapse like this tank here. So today we're talking about feeding. I recently had a complete disaster in one of my clients' tanks who was out of town, which gave me the idea to do this video. Follow along and I'll show you what to feed your fish, how often to feed them, when to feed them, and most importantly, how to avoid disasters when you're out of town and have someone else taking care of your tank. Before we take a look at the basics of feeding, I want to show you the consequences of extreme overfeeding. When you dump in a ton of food, and I'm talking like a ridiculous amount of food, like 10 times as much or 20 times as much as your fish can eat, what's going to happen is that food is going to end up in the filter, some of it at least, and it's going to clog up the filter. And then the worst thing that's going to result from this is oxygen depletion. And that's because you have aerobic bacteria in your tank. These are bacteria that consume oxygen as they consume food. These bacteria have the ability to reproduce like twice an hour on the higher end, and that means that they can grow exponentially. And as they grow, eating this food, these flakes and pellets that are just fouling up down here, it's going to cause the oxygen in the tank to crash, go through the floor. So this tank here that I showed you in the beginning, that is why all of these shrimp have died. It's because the bacteria are consuming so much oxygen while they eat this food and reproduce like crazy that there's nothing left for anyone else. You can see fish gasping at the surface. Snails are trying to escape, and as I drain the water during a water change, the snails, leeches, shrimp, they're like literally dangling on a cliff to get out of this tank for some actual oxygen. This should be like a major red flag for you to never overfeed. This tank experienced hundreds of dead shrimp in the course of a couple days. That's even in the presence of a air pump in this tank. There's oxygen flowing in here and it's still being outcompeted by this bacteria. It's a pretty similar process to how you would pick out food for yourself or for your dog or cat. Basically, you go on the back of the bottle and you start reading the ingredients, and you want to see natural things in the first ingredient at least, and hopefully in the next few following. You want to see some other things in there like enhanced vitamin C and K or D and other stuff like that. As I go down this list, there's a ton of stuff in here. There's really only a few different types of foods. We have flakes to start off with. These are probably the most common fish food. They're good for a lot of smaller fish. You can break them up real fine for tiny fish, almost into a powder so that they can get it. And then you have freeze-dried foods. I'm a big fan of freeze-dried foods. Brine shrimp, tubifex worms, black worms. You can find all sorts of freeze-dried things. They are very, very high quality type of food. They're pretty natural. Unfortunately, they don't have an exact ingredient list on all of them. Like this omega-1 doesn't say what the food is enhanced with. You know, even these freeze-dried foods that we think of as being extremely natural, truthfully, are processed to some degree for better or for worse. We do want them to have good shelf life and have the good minerals and nutrients for our fish. And then we have pellets. You can find little mini, teeny tiny pellets or big pellets for larger fish. Once you start dealing with big monster fish, you want to stay away from flakes because some of them won't even mess around or waste their time looking for them. Want to get pellets. Last but not least, we have some sinking pellets or wafers. There's two different types. We have algae wafers for the vegetarian or herbivorous bottom feeders or suckerfish, plecostomus and stuff. And then we have these sinking feeders. They're ideal for predators or omnivores. They're going to have a little bit higher protein content, and it's important that you don't just feed bottom feeders vegetarian or herbivorous meals, because a lot of them do need a good source of protein. Moving on to frozen foods. Frozen foods are a really, really great way to pack a high calorie meal in for your fish. They are extremely natural. Frozen meals are an awesome thing to be feeding your fish. I like to give it to them maybe a couple times a week. Live foods are another terrific way to give your fish a high protein, high fat meal, something that's going to really give them a lot of good, healthy, natural calories. You can buy them online, pretty expensive. Some fish stores, depending on where you live, will sell them at like the checkout area. Live brine shrimp or bloodworms, something like that is pretty common. You can also start colonies at home. Grindle worms, Daphnia, scuds, or amphipods, mosquito larvae. These are some of the more common, easier types to rear at home. One more really good option is to slice up some vegetables, blanch them sometimes. You can take a zucchini, slice it, put it on a fork, and stick it at the bottom of your tank. All of your herbivorous fish are going to go to town on that, and a lot of the omnivores will help out too. Remove the skins from frozen peas and heat those in the microwave for like 30 seconds, and then mush them up and give them to your fish. A lot of them really, really enjoy that, and it helps to reduce bloat and constipation. You should also be feeding your fish a wide variety of foods. It's not great when you get one type of food and feed exclusively that to your fish every day. I like to feed my fish something different, and rotate it like almost every day of the week. I got many types of flakes, freeze dried, frozens, and a couple types of live. Really, really rotate it as much as you can. Deciding how much to feed your fish is a really easy thing. You should feed them as much as they can eat in the span of 1 to 2 minutes. That means that you don't want food going uneaten after your timer stops. If you only have a few fish, then I'd say stick closer to the 1 minute mark. If you have tons of fish, then some of the smaller ones can have a hard time outcompeting the larger, faster fish. And so you should go on more of the 2 minute spectrum there. But, it's okay for some food to fall to the bottom if you have bottom feeders. In fact, you want to make sure that that food is falling to the bottom, but as much as they'll eat in 2 minutes. So I like to feed my fish 6 days out of the week. I usually pick one fast day. It helps them to kind of clear their guts out, especially if they're predatory fish. They're not eating much fiber. They don't have roughage to kind of help things pass through them. It's a really, really good idea, and it's not inhumane. In fact, in the wild, your fish are going to be eating way less frequently than they would in your home aquarium, and so they're already living a really healthy, abundant, rich lifestyle. The exception to feeding your fish once a day, 6 days a week, would be when you have freshly hatched fish, maybe from your aquarium, or newly purchased baby tiny fish. You can be feeding them 3, maybe even 4 times a day, but you still want to follow the previous rule of not feeding them more than they can eat in a short time frame. It is really important, though, if you have young fish, to feed them frequently, because that early stage of life, the really, really fast growth period, that's so important that they get all the nutrients and minerals and vitamins and volume of food that they need so that they can grow up into big, healthy, colorful, thriving fish. Let's talk about the consequences of overfeeding your tank just a little bit, but over the long run. Basically, what's going to happen here is you're slowly going to get buildup of nutrients in your tank. You're going to get high nitrate levels, maybe even some ammonia or nitrites if you're feeding more food than your beneficial bacteria colony can handle. And that can also impact your fish's health. If your fish is living in poor water quality, they're likely to be getting columnaris or bloat. Those are the two main things that fish get from overfed tanks. A couple other things that are likely is you're going to get an algae break if you have tons of uneaten food in your tank and elevated nitrate levels. It's just like prime conditions for algae. And then, like I mentioned earlier, you're also likely to get an outbreak of pests. So almost every aquarium has some pests already living in them. And I say pests, but it's I actually enjoy having these pond snails or bladder snails in my tank, but some people don't. And other things that are common, even if we don't see full outbreaks, are leeches, planaria, other types of worms. When you overfeed, these critters can just multiply exponentially and truly take over your tank. So, what do you do when you're out of town? There's a few options to feed your fish when you're out of town. One, you can hire a neighbor or ask a neighbor, friend, whatever, to come by. That's what my client did here, and it ended up in disaster. I've heard this happening so many times, and I've also experienced it myself with roommates in the past. No matter how clearly you explain things to people, they're likely to overfeed because it's just like within human nature. Oh, these fish look hungry. I want to be kind to them. I'm going to overfeed. Non-fish people don't get it. You can't blame them, especially kids. It's not really their fault. If you do insist on going that route of having someone feed your fish, then I would ask to watch them feed in front of you to make sure they understand what you're talking about. Or what I do when we go out of town, since we have 2 dogs and 3 cats, we have a house sitter come by. It's the cheapest alternative to kenneling everyone, and they're happier staying home anyways. But then I get someone to feed my fish, and because I don't trust people divvying out the right portion of food, I put these little, like, Sunday through Saturday, or the week long pill organizers, and I put the appropriate amount of food and I mix it up, a little bit of this type, a little bit of that type, because variety is really important for your fish. You want them to get tons of different types of foods. So I do that and then plop it on top of the tank, and they can just dump that in. Now, let's say you don't have someone coming by your house. You can stick on an auto feeder to your tank. I got a lot of harsh feedback from people on a past video about auto feeders failing. And yes, it's possible for an auto feeder to fail, but I've used auto feeders so many different times without them failing. It's really a very small percentage of the time that they fail. What's most likely going to happen if there's a malfunction, or I would say improper use of the auto feeder, is someone hasn't tried it out. So they've just gone out of town and set it up for the first time without seeing how the fish respond to it, how much food goes into the tank. You want to set up an auto feeder 4 or 5 days before you leave. Try it out, see how much food goes in, maybe increase or decrease the amount of food or the type of food in your feeder, so that you can be 100% sure that everything is going to be just fine. Another option, if you're out of town, is feeding blocks. Personally, I am not a fan of feeding blocks. They can foul up the water quality, and oftentimes fish don't really like them. And then, last but not least, if you're only out of town for a few days, just don't feed your fish. Fish can go for a few days without us putting food in the tank. Chances are there's little bits of algae and detritus and stuff they can pick on to kind of pass the time while you're gone. But cold-blooded animals also don't need to eat as frequently as warm-blooded animals. That's it for feeding your fish. Let me know, what are your favorite types of food, or maybe what do you think your fish's favorite types of food are, unless you're actually trying them yourself. What did I miss? Are there some major things I forgot to talk about? It's completely possible. I usually do forget something at least once in every video. But yeah, let me know, what do you think? If you enjoyed today's video, you learned something, hit that like and subscribe button. Support my channel. I really appreciate it. You could also buy something through an affiliate link if you want. That's a great way to support my channel. Some free ways, just watch some other videos. Thanks so much. Until next time, see ya.